us that we're connected, but it doesn't tell us we're connected. It's the weirdest thing. Every time I do this, John's got to figure out a better way for me. Really think, but all right, I think we're live. Right as you're mid pouring your drink. It's all good. So welcome everybody. It is a wonderful Monday evening. Hopefully where you are at, you're enjoying whatever necessities and niceties that there is. I know like right now where I am, it's not the case. Like it's supposed to snow. We're supposed to get like inches of something. And of course, Cubby, where you're at, like, 5-6 inches of snow is like a Tuesday in July, right?
Yeah, well, not as bad as John. But Iowa, we get a lot of snow, and it's supposed to have some more coming this week sometime later. Like I said, Wednesday, I think. Tuesday, Wednesday.
I have a few words for that groundhog. I really do. I have a few words for the groundhog. But this is nothing to do with the DJing, but I'm curious. So Groundhog's Day, which groundhog do you know of?
The only one I know is Punxsutawney Phil.
Okay. There are, no joke, like 15, I think, across the US. There's also like 2 or 3 in Canada. Like, it's not just a Punxsutawney Phil thing. Like, I only knew of the one. And for my day job as the teaching, of course, we had to do like a math problem related to the Groundhog's Day. And we found like all these other ones. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. There's more than one. And yeah, there's a lot.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. And there's some that are a lot more accurate. Like the one in North Carolina is a lot more accurate than one in Punxsutawney. So maybe we just need to boycott Phil. But he says there's going to be 6 more weeks of winter. And we didn't have any winter really this year other than the cold. And now we're going to get it all hit. And it stinks. But no, we're not gonna talk about weather all night tonight. I that would be kind of a weird show. We might be just as right as a meteorologist, but Don is not able to join us tonight. So he said, what do you guys want to talk about? So let me digress for just a quick second. Some of you, because I had somebody message me and be like, wait a minute, I thought you guys were talking about contracts tonight. We're not talking about contracts. That was the plan when John thought he was going to be here. But then when he realized he couldn't, and so we're going to push that back to another week, maybe next week. I don't know. John will let us know for that. But tonight we've got 3 different topics that we're going to hit for you. So I encourage you, if the first one doesn't apply to you and the second one doesn't apply to you, stick around for the third one, because if I'm not mistaken, I bet that's going to apply to you at some form or fashion in some way. If you haven't dealt with it already, it's coming. It's coming. That's just what I'm going to say. That third topic that we've got can be a doozy if you're not ready. So let's start with our first one. So what I wanted to kind of bring about was the topic of charities, because I think this is something that every so often we see go around the different forums. There's this big question when it comes to charity events. All the questions, whether do I do them? Do I charge? How do I get them to, X, Y, Z, everything under the sun, write-offs and everything? I will say this, we are not accountants, so we're not going to give you any tax advice for writing things off. But let me start with this. Cubby, do you find that first off, do you do any charity events throughout the year?
Yes, I do. I do trivia fundraising. I do background music for a lot of different events, auctioneer type of, events, and they have packages and dance parties. And yes, and to answer your question, yes, I do several different forms of charity events.
So one of the questions that I think comes about, and this is kind of the first and foremost of that, do you charge for those? You don't have to get into the details of how much, but do you charge for those charity events?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I think that for a lot of people, that becomes kind of the question mark, right? Because I think a lot of us would be fine with doing charity work, but a lot of times when they're reaching out, they don't want to pay anything. And I'll be honest, I totally 100% get it, right? So some of you know I do a charity event every year. My wife and I, we put it together, we host it, we even to the point of like we go and we buy the alcohol for the venue to serve. Like we go to that extent, right? And anything that we can do to restrict having to pay out, we kind of do, because in our viewpoint, anything that we pay out is less that we get to donate to the cause. And so it becomes it becomes that interesting process. I have another friend of mine who does almost the identical type of event, only on a much larger scale. And he has kind of a thing where that he runs the charity, but the charity pays his business. Like it's one of the expenses of doing the event is paying his business. And there's a lot of pieces that go into that. And I do understand some aspect of it, but is there a particular reason why you go okay, why do you want to get paid? Is there a certain direction that leads you to that for your charities?
Oh, so I guess I should backtrack. There's one charity that I do work with quite a bit, and I don't charge anything. And I do encourage, if there's something that's near and dear to your heart, mine is the Children's Cancer Connection. It's children that are battling cancer. I've done fundraisers for them. They hold 2 camps a year. One is oncology camp, where all the kids that are battling cancer, they come and they go for a whole week, and it's free for their families. And we do the dance portion of it. Monday nights, we work with the teens, do a dance, we do trivia. Thursday nights, we do an all camp dance party, and I've done it for 18 years. In August, we do one for siblings of kids that are their brothers, the siblings are battling oncology, and they may have lost their battle, but they still come to camp every year up until they're 18. It's free. Once again, it's still free for their parents. But those events are like on Mondays and Thursdays. They're not a Friday or Saturday or a big revenue night taker. And so if I have an event that is on a Friday or Saturday, I've got to make something to come out. I can't just do it all. So we come up with ideas. One of my biggest things is I do trivia fundraisers. And within my type of trivia, I have a thing called a Joker. And when I do it on a weekly basis at bars and pubs that we do it at, the different locations that we do it at, we give one away. At a charity event, we sell them for like $20 a piece, whatever, so there's table buy-ins, and I can usually make I tell them, I can make my fee back by selling Jokers to all the tables that are there. When I get people that want to do a photo booth, and they don't have any money for like a daddy-daughter dance or something like that, I'm like, go find a realtor. I will put her name on the bottom of the strip, sponsored by. Go find a realtor that will sponsor the photo booth for you and use it as a form of advertising. And I do discount. I mean, I'm not going full boat, for charity events, unless it's, again, an October and Saturday, or one of the hottest nights of the year, hottest nights of the year. That, because as a DJ, we only have so many Friday, Saturdays we can work. So if we're taking away one, so if it's got to be during the off season, a lot of different factors that go into it, I guess I should say. And I keep rambling, and I don't mean to.
No, you're completely fine. And in fact, you hit on a lot of the things that I think a lot of us don't. We always want to make money off of it, and there is something I feel about good in and good out, right? If you're doing good for companies, and there's a charity or a cause that you feel close to, that you feel the need to reach out to, it's one thing. But yeah, exactly. If they're reaching out for a Saturday in the heat of, or in the the tip of October, that's probably not a night you're going to want to donate for that. And for whatever reason, a lot of the charities that I really would like to work with different times always want to do something like that. They always want it to be a Saturday in one of the key months. And I tell them, I'm like, listen, if you want to think of a different night, let me know. But I think you picked up a good points that a lot of people don't really hone in on, which you just mentioned. Like when you're thinking about talking with these charities about your fees, right? If it is a night that you are going to charge for whatever reason, whether it's a cause you don't feel as close to, or whether it's just a night you really can't just justify giving away, finding those alternative ways to have sponsorships, right? And just flat out, like Cubby said, the bottom of the photo booth strip, or there are different organizations that won't donate to a cause, but they'll sponsor a cause. And all you have to do is quickly look at a lot of like the 5K races that are in your area, and you can quickly see some of those organizations that will cover some expenses that you might have. And some of the best things that you can do for that also is just to be, if you have the time, to be on some of their boards, to kind of just be like, listen, I've got some ideas. some ways that you can cover my costs and probably make a little extra, right? This is how much I want, but you could charge more for the sponsorship, right? And then call it the entertainment sponsor, something along those lines. So there are ways to do that. I think it is important though for you to recognize that sometimes things do come back to you. So this past Friday, I did my 2 charity events. So I talked about the one that I do at the end of the month. The one I do at the beginning of the month is not mine. But I've been a part of it now for, I think, like 5 years, the 5 events. We had off obviously 2021 and we squeaked it in 2020 before everything happened. But I'm a part of Minithon, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, where you're at. Penn State does Thon. This is like a 24-hour raging party in the Bryce Jordan Center. Not maybe raging party, but it's a big party, right? It's a lot of fun. You're not supposed to sit down at all. You're supposed to be going hardcore, and they raise thousands upon thousands of dollars, like buku money is raised at this 24-hour period. Well, some of the schools in our area have partnered with some of the same organizations, and at the high school level, they call it Minithon. And now some of the elementary schools have gotten involved and they call it Tinython. So it's kind of that idea. And I know it is somewhat nationwide, because I've had some other people post going, oh, I do that in my area, and they're not anywhere near PA. But I don't do it all night because I work my day job Fridays, and there's no way I'd make it till 24 hours later a week. But I go in and I donate to the school, like basically from the start until midnight. And I do it completely free. And it's come back to me because I get all the phone calls for prom. I do get all the phone calls for their formals. They don't do homecoming dances around this area very much, at least the school doesn't. So to the point that I've gotten so many of their other events that I've had people in the area think I was their only DJ. I don't tie this to the prom. I don't tie it to doing their formals, though that would be another potential direction you could go. If you're working with some of these schools that are looking for charity and fundraisers, like, listen, this is a Friday in March. I wasn't doing anything on a Friday in March other than going to bed if I'd been home. So it was a way for me to give back. It's a way for me to also make that connection with the school. My logo is on the back of all the t-shirts that they make. People are seeing that everywhere they go. And I think that's important to think about. So when you're thinking about charity events, keep those things in mind. You can make money. Cubby talked about some great ones. If you have a way to tie in, right? Way to tie in maybe other events, that's another way to think about it. And I would encourage everybody, if you have a cause that's near and dear to you, to find an event that you can just straight up donate something that doesn't really cost you a lot. Like for me to go and set up my equipment, wear and tear, but come on, there really wasn't anything cost-wise that was involved that night.
Oh no, it's we have dance marathons out here. There's just called thons, but we don't have the mini thons, which I thought is amazing, or the tiny thons yet. And I've done a couple dance marathons like you just. But anytime I get a call for a charity, I'm like, well, how many people eat? What is it? Then I lead in, what's your budget? Because a long time ago, I did an event for a charity, and they spent thousands upon thousands on decoration. And I'm thinking to myself, it was the decorator, it was over the top. It was a bubble ball, and it was a themed bubble ball where all the costumes, they were doing a fashion show, and everything was made out of bubble wrap. And it was amazingly decorated with thousands upon thousands of dollars. I'm thinking to myself, I'm coming in here for nothing, and yet they're paying this decorator thousands of dollars. And so I always say, well, what do you have in your budget? What are you looking for? What do you have in your budget? And then we can talk, try to find out more about the event. Is it like a one-off? Is it going to be a relationship? Is it, so I think that's amazing. And I'm not cold-hearted. I'm really not. But you're right. But it does fill your heart good when you see those numbers at the dance marathon or the thon and stuff. And they are amazing. If you can find your way to do it. I have to do it myself, because my people don't like to work for free. And then that's when it costs me money, is when I have to sit out an employee to do it too. So that's be something that I'm available for.
You hit on a great great question. And I want you to think about that as I'm picking up. I don't know if you guys caught that. one of the key things he asked them is what their budget is. I think sometimes when we get those phone calls or those emails, those inquiries about charities, we immediately assume that they want us for free. There are charity events out there that they have a budget set aside that they're going to pay this much. Maybe it's your fee, maybe it's less than, maybe it's more than, right? But they've got this set aside sometimes. And so it's a good question to ask, like, hey, what are you working with budget wise for entertainment? And they might be like, listen, we're looking for everything donated. And then you have to kind of figure out, but maybe they come back and give you a figure of, a lot of times they're a little more discreet, like, well, what do you charge? Are there other questions that you find that are key for you considering it?
If I had a family member, I think anything, I don't know, I got such a big heart. I love animals. I did a pet walk this year because I like dogs. So I was a sucker for that. Like I said, I got a couple hundred. I don't get a lot of money. It's like, it was a Saturday morning and it was $400, and we made announcements and did a dog costume. It was a lot of fun, but I made a little change, and they made exorbitant amount. And so, like I said, the whole thing is just talking budget and reliability. And then when they realize, oh my God, you bring so much more to the table, I already got it booked for next year because they'd never had a DJ before. Making announcements for their 5K dog run, that people run with their pets. So people do have budgets. They're not going to, except unless you get a 2-hour daddy-daughter dance that, then you're like, yeah, I have no money,
Well, it all depends, but yeah. And here's the thing that, sometimes these events are fun to do. Right. Because it's all, for a lot of their organizations, it's an instant crowd. They've already they're taking care of getting people there, right? They need to get people there. Otherwise they're not making, any money in their charity event. So they're going to get people that are there, and you have an opportunity to just do something different, right? If you're always doing, weddings, here's an opportunity to just play goofy background music and have some fun with it. And if it's a dog, pet show with costumes and everything else, that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm not really as much of a dog person, but that sounds like a lot of fun. So
it was a great time. It really was.
Yeah. A couple questions in the chat. Do I take pictures or videos? For me, it depends upon the event, right? If I'm doing a school dance, I do just a couple small things, just enough where you're not really going to see them so much, but enough to know that they're having a great time, because I want that element that I do. Like, I'm going to do the party thing. And then if the school does something, I share the crap out of that. Like, if the school does their pictures, I'm blasting that. Like, hey, it was so great to be a part of this, because they're going to love that. But otherwise, absolutely. You're doing the videos, you're doing because this is your promotion, right? This is an opportunity for you to promote this, and you're making yourself open to a new audience, potentially a new audience, right? The charity people are not necessarily maybe people you've connected with yet. And so here's an opportunity for you to be there, and promoting yourself, but then you might have people that follow you afterwards and seeing those events or having you pop up in such a way. So, yeah. All right. I don't have the fancy button to push and go, all right, we're going to pause for like 5 seconds. All right, so Michael's just gonna have to figure that one out. Let's move on to the second one, because this is the one that you brought up, and I'm really wanting to know kind of your take on this. And you brought up the idea of officiating, and I think this is something that you've mentioned once or twice. You are officially an officiant.
Yep.
What led you to that? Like, what led you to decide to even go down that path in the first place?
Seeing so many family in the state of Iowa. First of all, know your local laws on who can marry you. You have to be registered at the courthouse. In my backward state of Iowa, anybody can marry anybody. You don't even have to be registered at the courthouse. They didn't even ask you if you went online and got the universal church. Nothing, literally. So I got tired of seeing friends and family members marrying brides and grooms and forgetting them to tell everybody to please be seated after the father got up there with the bride. And then in Iowa, they're not going to sit down until you tell them to sit down. So there's a whole ceremony, everybody's standing, or they were just horrible. They just, they weren't speaking very properly. They weren't written very well. They weren't memorable. They were They were awful. And if there's one thing and that's very memorable, is their first dance. I mean, this ceremony, their first dance. You play a song later in the night that doesn't work, they're not going to remember that, but they're going to remember special times. And so the ceremony, I just got tired of seeing such bad ones. And there's not a DJ show out there yet that has done a seminar. There's Wedding MBA that has a whole stream of it, and there's a lot of DJs in there. And I've talked to Casey Kokoris. I don't think Atlantic City has one on it. MEX did not have a seminar on officiating, but it's something that we can do as DJs because we've already been exposed to how many ceremonies and so many things that go wrong that we can turn around, write a beautiful ceremony all about the bride and groom and be an add-on package and still rock the house and get I get a lot just off my officiating now. My officiating's growing even more. And when it's an extra $500 for a couple hours of writing, for a 30-minute ceremony and a couple hours of writing.
That's amazing. And that's amazing. First off, that you can do it and go that route. Now, when you are officiating, who's running your gear? Because they're coming in like you're not up there with your console and your controller hitting the buttons while you're up there.
And I tell them that part of the feed does go to somebody running the sound because now I cannot run the sound. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense. If you explain things to bride grooms, then it makes sense to them. So I do have to bring a person in. And it's generally somebody that I'm training. I've used my wife a few times. I mean, she always got to shuffle 4 songs, make sure my mic's on, leading the grandparents and grandparents, wedding party, she ain't mixing a whole bunch. You get a spouse or a family member, or if you're training somebody, they can run it as well and pay them $100.
Yeah. And exactly as you mentioned, it makes an easy transition. Also, if it's somebody that you're trying to bring in underneath your roof, obviously be careful of that, right? Give them the proper training, because the last thing you need to do is go, hold this wedding for a second. I got to go fix the mic situation that's in the back here. But yeah, just making sure that they're understanding, but to definitely help with that. Do you find a lot of couples needing that service, or how does that conversation even come up that, hey, I can do that for you?
A lot. Well, here in Iowa, we do have a lot of dual purpose venues. So a lot of people we're doing the ceremonies already, and we're doing the ceremony reception. And it just comes a part of, well, do you have an officiant? Sometimes they go, no, not yet. And I'm like, well, we have it. We can add it later, but my style is I do the Mark Farrell love story. So it is concentrated on the bride and groom. How they met, different adventures they went on while they were dating, places they went, locations, funny things that might happen. The day that he proposed, did she know it was going to happen, or did he surprise her? Did he ask her dad? All the other stuff that happened. There's funny stories. And then, why are you getting married today? And then, you have the declaration of intent, which is the I do's, and then you have the ring ceremony. And then you have if you do a unity, because unity ties it at the end, and then you do a recessional. I tell my brides and grooms, we're going to laugh a little bit, we're going to cry a little bit, we're going to high five, go drink some beer, and have a great time. And they love it. I've done Star Wars weddings, I've done customizable weddings for Star Wars and Star Trek. I'm a non-denominational celebrant. And I can cater it to you guys, and then helping the photographers out. Like, I got it ending. So after this, it's really coming down to and I coach other people. As soon as they get done with the unity, I step away from the unity ceremony, so they're in front, and then I stay right there, and I have maybe 4 or 5 lines that I wrap up the ceremony, and then they kiss, and I'm out of the way for the ceremony, or the first kiss, right? So it's really well programmed in the way that I do it, and it's just been successful. And it really is. People are like, I've never seen a ceremony like that. It's so fun. That is totally about the bride and the groom, not cheesy stuff that they just got off Google.
Yeah. And I think that's key. When you're doing this, right, we talk about training, and I think so oftentimes we run into a situation or we hear about DJs adding the officiant piece to it. And what comes to mind is, oh, well, they're doing it to make a few extra bucks. And exactly like you said, they're looking it off of Google. But if you're taking the time to do this, the training has to be key. that it has to be key to what you decide to do with that, whether it's the Mark Farrell love story, whether it is, another direction with it, whether it's even, for lack of better terms, being an assistant to a regular officiant. Like if you've worked with some officiants, and you have a good relationship with them, it might be something that you could come alongside them and be like, hey, I'm interested in offering this. I don't want to step on any toes, but would you mind walking me through your process? Would you mind talking to me about that? And finding your own voice in what you're doing. It's definitely going to make a key. I'll be honest, I've thought about adding it, but not in Pennsylvania is kind of weird too. Like we don't have the Iowa anything goes types of situation. We actually have to there are a bunch of steps and things that we have to do. One of those is you either have to be ordained or be a judge. Like it's almost to that extent, I think in Pennsylvania. But Universalist Church, I can talk something, is one of those that kind of works. But I thought about adding it just as that, oh crap situation, right? We're all set, we're ready to go, and where's the officiant? Like, where are they at? Like I've had some situations, not quite to that, but they're cutting it a lot closer than in my viewpoint they should have. 15 minutes before we're supposed to be walking down the aisle is not when you should be pulling up in your car. Right. And yet I've had that happen. Now, granted, there were circumstances that led to that, but what if the circumstances had been worse? Or more delayed? I think in some aspects, having yourself as a way to be prepared is a good opportunity. Now, in that case, unless you already have an assistant with you, you're probably not going to have the 2-person team. But in the same respect, you don't have to go, is there a doctor? I mean, is there an officiant in the house? Right. You're not going to have that. You're not going to have that role if you have that at least tucked back in your back pocket. So just something to think about. Yeah. Anything else you want to add about like the officiating path? I think it's great that you offer that and you've had such a positive response with it.
I think a lot of people are, Mike Walters, he always has a few of 1,000 weddings, and then he's like in the front now or whatever. And I think, like I said, I think it's a simple add-on that is maybe just a few writing courses. Just the key is getting great paperwork that the bride group can fill out, knowing what questions to ask, and then just being able to write it and do like a writing class type of a thing. And I would help anybody out, man. I'll give you my bride group answer sheets. Seriously, I'll help anybody out. It's not a problem whatsoever. As long as you're not in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm just kidding. I'll help anybody in Des Moines, Iowa. I don't care. But yeah, if anybody has any questions about officiating or, transitions, my different transitions, from going from love story to declaration of intent to ring ceremony, or what I use, or if I use for LGBTQ wedding, there's different, instead of, can't say bride and grooming longer, so you have to talk about couples. I've got all those different scripts, and it's amazing. It's easy.
And we're already versed in a lot of the skills that we would be using because we're public speakers, right? We're used to being on a microphone. I'm sure we can instantly think, even probably within the last year, working with an officiant that has made us cringe for some form or fashion, right? Either they had no idea what they were doing with the microphone. They had no idea how to avoid hitting it with jewelry or any of the other things that we can instantly think of, the nightmares that we all sit there and go, just get through this already. But again, to think that you can step into the role like that, I think is being a huge disservice to anyone. It's like knowing how to drive a sports car because you saw one 1,000 times, right? Yeah, you might be able to hop in, you might be able to make it go, but are you really going to do what it's supposed to do? Probably not. So make sure if you decide to go this path that you are taking the proper steps to go those other parts. So interesting. They're talking about some prices of officiants in their areas in the chat. And I think Day's about an hour and a half south of me. He's saying, some of them are making almost as much for an hour's time, right? The ceremony and that, as they do for the whole day.
I saw some speak at Wedding MBA that dragged that command that kind of money as well, and our book's solid, and they sounded great, way better than I did. And so at Wedding MBA, it's a great show in November. They do have an officiate platform to go down, and you can learn those people make it. Yeah, when you can build your officiating business, and yeah, there's some really good ones.
Yeah. Oh, in your county. Okay. Mike, you mentioned that in his county, the judges can't charge for a ceremony or even accept a tip. But that might be restricted to his county, because I know of some mayors that I've worked with. I know some judges that I've worked with that, in talking with them and different things, the judges, I think, is a little bit different, but I think they get around it by saying, basically, you covering my expenses of traveling to this location. You're not coming to my courtroom to do this. I'm coming to you. So there's a fee that's associated with that piece, travel fee or whatever you want to call it. But yeah. So, okay. Let's give her a little pause for Michael. Okay, now we're going to get into our last topic. This last one that I wanted to touch on, like this is a hot button for me lately. And I know different people have different viewpoints on what's acceptable and not. But when I was scrolling through Facebook and everything else, as we were coming up with our topics for today, one topic that I saw, kind of repeated a bunch of times came into the request list. And more specifically, couples who are coming at you with an absorbent amount of, not absorbent, an excessive amount. Suddenly I can't talk again. An excessive amount of requests, like to the extent that they're trying to plan almost every minute of the night. So let me start by throwing this out to you. What are some things that you do, I guess, to kind of slow that up maybe a little bit? We were talking beforehand, basically, is what I'm kind of getting at.
So I use a program called the DJ Event Planner, and within DJ Event Planner, you can give brides and grooms access to request songs. I limit those songs. I only give them 10 must plays, because regardless how shitty it is, if it's in the must play, I'm playing it for. And if I'm talking about it, I'm going to talk about it at the planning meeting. Like, what is the meaning behind this song? Because it generally clears the dance floor, Stairway to Heaven, or, something horrible, but I will talk about that song. But 10 must plays. And then we give 75 play of possibles. I limit it, because in 75 play of possibles, doesn't mean I'm not required to play it. And it gives me 2 to 3 hours worth of music that lets me know what they want to hear. But I think it all starts in, and I'm not familiar with other services, and I apologize. I've stuck with DJ Van Flutter for years, so I'm not familiar with if you can limit on other services the amount of requests you can give. But I do know in DJ Event Planner that you can, and I would utilize that, and then that way, then control it as much as you can.
I think one of the other things where this stems from is not so much. Well, first off, I think there are some groups that are not using anything like at all for management. Like they're giving them a Google form or Microsoft form and saying, hey, fill this out, and it gives them all their details. And then the couple goes, here, I've got this, as Reggie put, 4 pages of requests.
Whew.
Have at it, right? And I think what ends up happening is it just, because they're not using anything, there's none of those built-ins. But I will say this, I use DJ Event Planner. By the way, they're one of our sponsors. Highly recommend. If you don't check them out, go check them out. You'd be glad you did. They've got some great programs. I will say this, there is a learning curve to setting it up, right? So for those of you that are like, well, I tried it and I couldn't figure it out in like a day, so I left it. Well, deal with it, right? You can't have something that's super powerful and not have something you got to learn how to use. So you can, and it's got some great features, and you need to go do it. Trust me on that. Anyway, I digress. I have those restrictions set up, not near as I think mine's like 10 for like must plays and 15 for play of possibles. And then I think I even only have 15 do not do not plays. But what I found is I have a lot of couples who, because they listen to Spotify or YouTube Music or Apple Music, they create a playlist on these services already. Like they've got a running playlist. Like before we even get to like the plan, before me even giving them the planning forms, they've been talking about their wedding and they're like, oh, when we were in the car, we were listening to Spotify and this song came up. So we added it to that playlist. And we were at a wedding and we heard this song, we added to the playlist. And the next thing you know, they have, 10 hours of music on their list. And they go, here, we want this. And I think a lot of people, they struggle with that because they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to tell the couple in a polite way, no. Like, let's talk about this. Like, where does this come from? Like some DJs, and then when I was looking through the comments on Facebook, there were some DJs that were like, that fine. Like, what DJ can't take a playlist and run with it? Right. As you said, there's going to be songs in there that could be potentially like killers. But for the most part, like what DJ can't take a playlist and run with it? But I think what happens is this isn't just giving me play of possibles, and I try and make sense of putting him in an order that's good. But some couples are reaching out saying, I've got a song planned out. If you had a couple that came to you and said, I've got, and unfortunately, well, I'm going to back up because I think I was about to say something that you would prevent happening. But if you had a couple that came to you and said, I've got every song planned out, at what point do you find that? Because I know you do. I just have it in my feeling that I know you would get that out of them at a certain path. Where in the process do you think you would find that out?
The planning meeting 4 to 6 weeks prior, because we talk about music and what they like and what their family favorites are, and what can I expect? Are they big dancers, not big dancers? And then that's where if they haven't already done the playlist, there was well, you got up until about a week before. And I explained to them like, and I think I've used this analogy before, and I apologize for using it again, but it's the only one that I have, is that if I'm a baker of a cake, you're going to tell me what flavor you want, what kind of frosting you want on it, but you're not going to tell me every ingredient of that cake. So when you give me your playlist, I'm going to take the flavors out of there that you like. I'm going to create the best tasting cake that you have with what you've given me. And then they trust me to do that.
Have you ever had a couple come back to you after that analogy and said, I get what you're getting at, but here's our list? I had that happen one time. Now, it was early on in my career, which is probably part of what led to the problem. But I had this, and I didn't use that exact analogy, but when she gave me the list, I was like, listen, I said, you really want to be able to open the door here. Like I can take and I can pull out the songs and I can try and put them together in a way that's working. But my response to you is going to be, what happens if it's not working? Like, no, it'll work. Okay. And it was one of those things, like, I just didn't know how to tell her in a way that was going to convince her. Like, I'm not trying to be rude, right? I'm not trying to say your songs suck, but
they suck.
If they suck, what recourse do I have? And she really was giving me nothing. And so we got into it and I played pulling from as much on that list as I had. And it's not like it's not like her songs are obscure. They were just not songs that were going to appeal to the wide range of audiences that were at her wedding. Right. And she was getting nobody. She could tell I was trying everything I could. Finally, she came up to me and she goes, okay, you're right. And she's like, just get them on the floor. It's fine. You ignore the list. I did. And we salvaged the rest of the party. And sometimes when I get that massive request list, and obviously 10 hours is easy for you to go, listen, our wedding's not that long. I can't play everything. So please give me some flexibility to work that in your guest requests in and songs that might fill to help, transition better. And a lot of times they're like, okay. But if you got a bride that's really insistent, or bride or groom or couples rather that are insistent on doing that, we're going to pick most of them. Feel free to throw my story at them. Feel free to say, listen, I was talking to this one DJ one time and he was telling me about what happened at his wedding. So my question to you is, what's your plan? What's your plan if this doesn't work for you? The other thing I throw out to a lot of times when couples try and do too much of that, listen, I'm a really expensive jukebox, like really expensive. Like if you wanted all that, you probably shouldn't have hired me, like because you spent a lot just to have that. So I think it's important to talk with them. I'll be honest, I thought you would have found that out at the initial, like, should we hire Cubby to do our wedding? I for some reason I would have thought you would have gotten into it at that point.
We talk about it, but not really. I get a lot of referrals either from previous weddings. And again, I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm not bragging or anything. Longevity is what's keeping me alive, honestly. Longevity referrals, and they've generally seen me. So yeah, I just never had one. I had a bride who thought she had to fill out every song, that all 75. I'm like, oh my God, no, honey, no. Just put some family favorites in there, some high school favorites. So I'm with you. I think it's a combination of education and communication. You educate them and you talk to them, and then you're like, look, with our experience together, with this playlist you give me, we could come up with something great. Make them think they're still a part of it, but then just go off and play the songs that you know are going to hit. Because if she gave you 10 hours, you can find a good 3 hours of dance music in there.
I would hope. Oh my gosh, I would hope.
I have done. I'm not gonna lie. I have done some that had some really wild songs on them, and I just kind of blew over them, just like. Ugh. And then at the end of the night, they forgot all about them. Because it was such a good dance party, it didn't really matter because it was such a good dance party.
A lot of times I found that that's the case. Like there's been different ones, where I've been going along and I've been playing and trying to hit as many of the requests I can, but there's a couple of them that I'm just kind of holding back on because I'm just not feeling the song. Like I'm not feeling like it's going to fit with this crowd. And for a while there, I would also come up to them towards the end of the night with about 20 minutes left. I would just throw out to them like, hey, we're almost to the end. Is there anything you want to hear that you haven't heard?
And it was usually, miss anything? If I miss anything?
Yeah, basically, like, is there basically a friend favorite here? Something that, oh, we all, when we were all at the bar at the end of the night, we all just always happen to hear this song. Like is there something like that? Right. And a lot of times we cover those in the meeting, but every once in a while something would slip through. So when you ask that question to the couple, it gives them a chance to throw that in. Actually, I've kind of gotten away from asking it because for the last like 2 or 3 years prior to me getting away from it, they're like, no, we're fine. We're good. Everything was awesome. Like, or whatever it was. Like they forget that they even put half the songs on their list that they had, or they assume that they were outside or they were in the bathroom or they were talking to somebody, maybe when one of those play of possibles that they really liked even possibly came on. But I will say, I encourage you to ask for requests from your guests.
Oh yeah, by all means.
That is such an inside track that you don't even realize has the power it does. So I mentioned I'm in PA. I'm an hour from State College, Penn State area, right? This is like, most of the people in this area like Penn State. Now you got some Notre Dame fans, but they're just weird. But you've got all the Penn State fans. But Ohio State is like rivalry. So like to play anything that is an Ohio State song would never cross my mind. Okay. Hang on, Sloopy, I think. Don't crucify me, those people that are Ohio State fans. Hang on, Sloopy, I think. Right. I had somebody request that. I was like, no, I don't know. I was like, whatever. I'm going to throw it in. Not a song I would have in 1,000 years played probably had it not been requested. They broke out into OHIO. I didn't know half the family actually lived in Ohio and was Ohio State fans. They came in for the wedding. Those are the insights you're going to find out from requests. Those are the things. So when you get your lists, as Cubby said, go through them. Find out why some of them are important. Do you need to go through the 10 hours of music? No. Chances are they were just kind of randomly hitting play or hitting add to playlist and stuff like that. Mike, I think Mikey mentions, or somebody in here mentioned, they don't even bring up the couple's Spotify. Like they encourage them just to send them a screenshot. There are softwares out there. I'll give a quick plug for Crate Hackers. Crate Hackers can take a Spotify playlist and can put it into your software pretty seamlessly. Couple little steps you might have to do on your end. And there probably are other ones as well. But if they're, if they're giving you something like that, there are tools for you to use that will save you time rather than looking at a picture and dragging it in. I'm not saying you have to play off Spotify. Please, by all means, don't resort to that. But like using the tools that are available to you to help you, it's going to save you time in the end. Definitely.
And DJ Event Planner has that as well. Spotify.
Yeah, you and I were talking beforehand that you have the ability to take your request list that's in DJ Event Planner and at least with virtual, put it into virtual pretty seamlessly.
It's just there's steps, just like Crate Hawkers. There's a few steps, but it's doable.
Yeah. So those another plug for DJ Event Planner. Learn how to take that, and if not, maybe we even get MJ to come back and do another video. He may have done it already, but if he hadn't, we'll get him to do a video, or Cubby maybe, of throwing it in there and showing how to make that transition, because I think that would be a powerful piece that a lot of people just. I was unaware of it. I mean, I've used both now for a few years, virtual for even longer. I didn't know like that could happen, and that would have saved me a little headache from time to time. So we got time for one little question here that was posed in the chat, and I think it's worth just kind of touching base. Mikey Mike says, do you announce who you are at the beginning of the wedding? I'm assuming you're talking about the reception here, and we're not talking ceremony, although you could as the officiating piece. But
I just, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dan and Susan's celebration of love. And in just a few minutes, we was called the grand introduction of the wedding party, and that's where you guys come in. I don't introduce myself. I figure if they want to know who I am, they'll come up and ask me for a card. I don't have any logos on my laptop. I don't have any logos in front of my system because they don't want them in their first dance. I don't want to be anywhere near their first dance. So I have no logos on any of my gear. Once again, I know it's a firestorm where some people do it, some people don't. It's just me personal. But no, I don't say my name is Andy. I'm going to be your host MC this evening. Figure people, assume it. No, but I don't really have to know my name. I guess I figure if they want to know, they'll ask me. And if I suck, they definitely. I'll tell them I'm Dan Carpenter or something.
Yeah, I'm not coming to Iowa. But no, I think it's, it depends upon what I remember. So there are times. So for example, I've done the Mark Farrell stuff, and I've done some different things with that, and talks about, when you come out and you start the night as the MC and taking that presence and basically, welcome everybody, my name is, and there have been times where I've done that. I don't go, I usually, if I do it, it's just, I'm Dan and I'll be your MC tonight. Don't bother with my last name. I don't bother with my company name. Like just the very informal piece of saying who my name is, so that if they have a question, they want to talk to me later, they know my name. That's it. Like I'm not using it as publicity. I'm not using it as marketing. Now I do put my logo on my laptop, which is, we could say this probably for a Q&A night, but I do it kind of purposefully. Because I have my rolling booth that has the picture of the bride and groom on the front that gets, in an average night, if I have 10 photos taken of it, that's a slow night. My booth is probably one of the most pictured things out of the event that doesn't involve the physical bodies of the human or the bride and groom and the couple, right? That booth, just everybody takes pictures of it. And because the couple's pictures on the front, and my laptop just happens to be right there, my little logo right there. That's my own personal piece though on that. So
I don't have one of those sexy booths like you have. I got a Danny Max. No
screen.
Oh,
no, we don't even go there, because Danny will get mad at you for calling his booth not sexy.
Oh no, mine is very sexy. It just doesn't have a screen.
Oh, there we go. It's not as versatile. We'll say that.
Right.
So yeah, and we can make a whole night of announcing, but unfortunately we are pretty much out of time. So we're gonna save some of these that were into the chat, and we'll put those into the Q&A night that Cubby, John, and I will do at some point. It's got to be this month, right? But sometime later in this month we'll tackle that and talk a little bit more about that, and possibly those announcing pieces. But I do want to encourage everybody, if you are not yet ready, make sure you at 10 o'clock, you head on over to djntv.com/chill. That is the chill room. I'll go ahead and drop that into the chat. But that is an opportunity for you to join in with Howie and the crew as they are talking about all the other little nuances. Think of it, again, we always use this kind of analogy, but think of it like you go to a seminar, and Cubby and I are using ourselves as that very loosely, but we're the seminar. And then what happens in the chill room is oftentimes kind of what happens in the hallway after said seminar, right? You chat a little bit about it. What'd you think about that? Or what'd you think about? So there'll be some of that, but they'll also have their own topic. And that's what usually happens in the first 20 minutes. And then some opportunity for you to hang out and have just a great time. So again, check that out, djntv.com/chill. More great things are coming this week. Ben Stowe is going to be coming up tomorrow night. I forget what's on Wednesday. Besides, like, what's the topics for Wednesday, but there's going to be some replays of some of the different things with Howie and the guys. So make sure if you get a chance, pay attention to all the emails that come from John, so you're up to date on all those things that are happening. Cubby, anything you want to end us with, or anything else you want to last words of wisdom from Cubby?
Oh man, just thanks for coming out and listening to us on Monday night and all the great questions and the feedback. And it's just a lot of fun. And wedding season's cranking back up. Had a wedding planning meeting tonight, and I'm just getting excited. Get rolling again.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we cannot wait. It's awesome. Can we talk about Cubby's dog? We will definitely have to do that at some point, but unfortunately not tonight. You guys have yourself a great one, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.